Have you ever changed the way you speak because you realize someone else was watching? Maybe you sit straighter, choose your words more carefully, and wonder, what do they think of me? Now imagine that person is a journalist. Your face becomes an image, one answer becomes a quote, and one moment becomes a headline. Then strangers begin to decide who you are. So how can journalists report on people without letting one moment define their whole identity? Jean-Paul Sartre was a French philosopher who wrote about freedom and other people's judgment. In Being and Nothingness, he imagined someone looking through a keyhole. At first, the person is fully absorbed in what is behind the door. They're not standing back and judging themselves. Then they hear footsteps. Suddenly they're still looking, but they also experience themselves as someone who can be seen, exposed, and open to judgment. Sartre calls this the look. The person remains free, but they also become an object in someone else's world. They now have an outside identity they cannot fully control. This matters to journalism because the look does not have to happen face to face. Luna and Rose used Sartre to explain public shaming. They argued that people can be judged by a distant and anonymous audience, often according to shared ideas about how they should behave. Journalism can place someone before that audience and give the public a frame through which to judge them. I call this being for the public. When Sartre's interpersonal look becomes a public and mediated look. The Lindy Chamberlain case shows the danger.
The prosecution says that here, Lindy Chamberlain cut the throat of her baby and husband Michael helped cover up the homicide.
After her baby daughter Azaria disappeared at Uluru in 1980, Lindy said a dingo had taken her. But attention soon shifted from the evidence to Lindy herself. Her face, voice, religion, and way of grieving were judged because she didn't match the expected image of an innocent, grieving mother.
Might have damaged or mauled the baby, and I ran towards the tent. I was only...
Calmness could look like coldness, and confidence could look like guilt. She was evicted, but later cleared. In 2012, a coroner confirmed that a dingo had taken Azaria. By then, Lindy had become the cold mother in the public imagination. Lindy was still speaking and acting for herself, but she could not fully control how a distant public interpreted her actions. Luna and Rose argue that in mediated spaces, expressions can be taken up and reinterpreted by an audience. People began to interpret everything Lindy did through the same public identity. Sartre explains what it means to become an object in other people's eyes. Luna and Rose show how the judgment can be reinforced by a wider public. Journalists should separate evidence from emotional assumptions. If a subject appears calm, they can ask open questions and give the person space to explain their experience, rather than allowing others to define what the calmness means. This is not about making someone perform grief. It is about preserving their voice and agency. Objectivity does not mean pretending journalists have no influence. It means recognizing the power to select, frame, and amplify, then using that power responsibly. Sartre shows that once we're seen, a version of us exists in other people's eyes. Journalism cannot remove the conditions of being seen, but it can shape how the visibility is framed. The ethical task is to make people visible without trapping them inside one public image. The task is not to stop looking. It is to keep seeing the free person behind the frame.